Of course, the museum we're talking about here is the Museum of Motion Picture Arts and Sciences. Open in 2021. That's not the one we're talking about.
No,
that's not the one we're talking about. I read my own notes wrong. That is not the one we're talking about.
Okay.
Abort.
A fort.
We had that one, but the first calls for there to be a museum of movies in Los Angeles started in 1917, which, what are they going to have? In the D.W. Griffith's lunch from the day before? What movie history could possibly have been in 1917?
Oh my God, what's his name? Not Fat Albert. What's the silent movie star's name?
Yeah, Fat Albert.
What's his name?
Oh, the Junkyard Gang?
The big
Fatty
guy.
Arbuckle?
Fatty Arbuckle.
Hey, I didn't kill that lady.
Hey, you're not supposed to be able to hear me talk. As soon as Fatty Arbuckle's done shooting, like, give me the hat. We got to put it in the museum.
Yeah. Can you also take this gun? Allegedly. But other serious to half serious proposals popped up over the decades following this for movie museums. There was one proposed in Culver City. There actually was a small movie museum opened on the USC campus in 1928.
Oh, wow. Okay.
In the 40s, they considered building one on the site of the Cafe Trocadero on Sunset when it closed.
Okay.
There was an idea to put one where the original Warner Brothers studio was on Sunset, but it wasn't until the mid-50s that the first credible proposal started floating around.
Okay.
Credible because this one was going to be run by the county of Los Angeles and had actual powerful names in show business and government attached to it. I wrote showbiz. That was just shorthand in my notes. That means show business. That's why I said that a little weird.
For the layman out there.
And for government, I wrote, Putin's government. That just means government to you people. So this was the Los Angeles County Hollywood Museum, or later the Hollywood Motion Picture and Television Museum. Mm-hmm. And the formal process to get work started on this began in 1959. Designed by our old pal, William Pereira.
Oh, right.
It wasn't just going to be a dusty old movie museum. It was going to be the Disneyland of movies.
Okay.
Let me guide you through this Wonka-esque experience that almost was.
Okay.
First, you'd buy your tickets from an animatronic Clark Gable or Marlene Dietrich or someone else of that ilk. So you'd go up to, frankly, my dear, I don't give change.
Frankly, my dear, I don't give group rates. And whatever Marlene Dietrich said, I don't remember. My knowledge is limited.
Why don't you come up and use a Groupon sometime? No, that wasn't her. How about we have the animatronic Fatty Arbuckle out here? He can really work a crowd. He can really work a gun also, but...
did not shoot anybody. Absolutely did not shoot a person.
Oh, yeah. I guess it was something else he did. I retract my jokes from before. Then you'd walk into a 4-story high forest containing exhibits on the history of film and artifacts from classic movies. Then you'd get into an elevator that took you to a recreation of an ancient Roman street with more exhibits and more artifacts, not Roman artifacts.
Yeah, this harkens back to a time when they made movies in Rome.
Oh, and they don't now? You're not excited to see Joaquin Phoenix is Caligula coming to theaters? From there would be even more exhibit space set inside of various movie set recreations, including the full actual recreated sets of various classic movies would be in here that you could walk through.
Oh, cool.
There were also going to be glass booths you could walk into that would overlook 2 active sound stages that they would rent out to studios to film actual movies. So you could stand above and watch Marlene Dietrich say her signature line.
Yeah, which we all know. And we don't even need to say it again.
Why don't you come down and see me sometime? Again, I'm pretty sure that's not. I think that's Betty Davis.
That's Mae West.
Mae West.
Mae
the
West.
Other one.
Yeah. You can look down while they're filming a movie and call TMZ on a rotary phone and be like, I know exactly what Marvel movie they're shooting today.
Hang on. Clara, can you get me TMZ 555? Yeah, Harvey? You won't believe who I just saw taking tickets in front of the movie museum.
Drunk as a skunk. When I did the snap in front of his eyes, did not move.
Sparks flying off of him.
Yeah.
Watch these two. The sparks will fly. And if they do, call 911. Please call the fire department. So there would be an academic library and film vaults and a 600-seat theater to screen movies in, 800 parking spots.
Now you're speaking my language.
And of course, a full recreation of the Hollywood canteen that you could eat your lunch or dinner.
Wow.
And also they had Clark Gable there, and he would say, frankly, my dear, I don't give a ham. I've had that in my back pocket for like 2 minutes now.
How am I going to pull this off?
How am I going to
How am I going to land there?
The facts I gave you were true. Clark Gable did not say that, though. It was turkey. So as the plans and the ambition grew, this museum expanded to also cover not only movies, but also radio, television, and music. Cool. So it was just the new arts
Yeah.
is what it's going to cover. And the location for this, across the street from the Hollywood Bowl, where the Lasky Barn now is on Highland.
Got it.
Just to make sure traffic there was as bad as possible by the laws of physics. Whatever else we can cram in here. Let's also put a hospital.
Yeah, let's put a hospital right there. Let's see if we can...
And a police station.
Yeah, let's see if we can start the tram tours here for Universal Studios. Maybe they can pick up here.
Yeah, we're willing to rent out the little space we do have left to parking for Disneyland.
Yeah, and then this turn lane here, I think we're going to have a farmer's market.
Every day.
24/7. 24/7.
So not only that, big time supporter of this and head freezing, Walt Disney planned to move CalArts pretty much where the Ford Theater is to help turn that whole area into a mega campus of sorts for CalArts. So it was
also the original, like around there is what Whitley Heights, the original Hollywood area, right?
Well, we'll kind of, this might be where that story's kind of going.
Okay.
But it was sort of going to be like a cultural, the Hollywood Bowl, CalArts, and this museum. That was going to be, and then you got the valley right there. Great, you got the valley right there. And then Monkey Island is just
right
up the road.
around the corner as a threat. The Spanish ships are closing in on Mexico.
It was estimated to cost $6.5 million, and many celebrities and rich people already pledged millions of their own dollars to pay for the startup costs. And then once it was set up, it was going to be run by the county with continuing costs paid for through taxes and also donations.
Okay.
On June 1st, 1960, the city approved the 4.5 acres of land it was going to be on, and it was officially approved for construction by Governor Edmund Brown in April 1961. Cecil B. DeMille, Jesse Lasky, Carl Laemmle, Mary Pickford, and many others pledged to donate their full collection of Hollywood memorabilia to the museum. But in a sign of the things to come, it wasn't until October 1963 that they had a groundbreaking ceremony.
Okay.
Not just like this is an innovative ceremony. They broke the ground.
They broke the
ceremony.
Clark Gable, jackhammer, Summer Day.
Frankly, my dear...
I don't give a ham.
I don't give a slam. And the earth shook. His whole career can be condensed into that one
movie, a star of many great films.
So 6,000 people were in attendance, including Ice Cube head himself, Walt Disney, Jimmy Stewart, Gene Autry, Gregory Peck, Mary Pickford, Gloria Swanson, Ramon Navarro, and a bunch of nobodies, and 5,990 nobodies. They broke the ground just fine, but there was one thing that they could not break: an ex-Marine who couldn't afford to move anywhere else, Stephen Anthony. Like I said, former Marine, current bartender at Barney's Beanery.
Okay.
He was 33 but looked 57, and he lived at 6655 Alta Loma Terrace, which was about where Fairfield and Odin is right now next to the barn. I drove by this today. It's like you were talking about. So this was a neighborhood. There was one holdout. He lived there at this address with his wife and kids. The house itself was a really nice little cottage type house built in 1923 that was actually owned by and built for a producer named Gordon Pollock, who years before this had rented it to Bette Davis. This was her first house in Hollywood.
Wow, really?
Pollock was
That's a big deal.
That's a big deal. And she was like obsessed with, like, she wrote about this house in her biography. Like, she loved this house.
Yeah.
Pollock was now Anthony's landlord, and in something unfathomable to me, he was actually friends with his landlord and helped him out with things. So when Pollock and his wife both died in a plane crash, it turned out that he had actually willed the house to Anthony.
Okay.
That whole area was covered with little cottage houses like this one, but to make room for the coming museum, everyone else was paid to move by the city, and the homes were bulldozed under eminent domain, except Stephen Anthony's house.
Because he owned it?
They all owned the houses.
Oh, okay.
The city bought them all out.
But he didn't.
He said, I'm not leaving.
Yeah.
In a much too relatable situation for me, the city had offered him money to move, but he had refused, saying that it wasn't enough money to find a reasonably comparable house to the one he already owned.
Yes.
The city could not disagree more. The amount that he was offered was $11,750, which today is about $120,000, which back then maybe was enough. But he said that there were a lot of back taxes on the house he had inherited. So after all that was paid off, it would only actually be $3,000 that he was getting from this. So, of course, the city started the process of forcibly evicting him.
Wow.
But evictions take a long time, and Anthony was fighting it hard in court for 2 years. He argued his point about it not being enough money. He said his daughter was too sick to be moved to a new house. He said the house was a historic landmark. His lawyers said the county had no claim to his land because the museum was partially a private entity. None of these were working. No angle was working.
It's strange because it's one of the greatest movie stars of all time's home. You'd think that they would work that into the museum.
Design it into the building. But he still lives in it.
Yeah.
But he has to pay admission every day. You got to go up to Clark Gable.
They get like a local residence discount.
Yeah. SoCal resident.
SoCal resident discount. Yeah.
You also get a ticket to Cal Arts. So every appeal was rejected. And according to the law, Anthony and his family had to move. And the situation was getting dire because there had been no further construction in those 2 years since the groundbreaking because of his house.
Yeah.
They couldn't get rid of this house, and the money people behind this needed the project to get moving, or else it was going to be dead in the water, much like the people from my other story. So those are the two sides that took us to February 8th, 1964.
Okay.
The day before the Beatles were on Ed Sullivan.
Oh my God.
And just to preface this guy, you know, when I was reading about this, there were a lot of, I guess you could say dog whistles.
Okay.
Or like red flags and dog whistles where I was like, this guy, I admire what he's doing, that he didn't give up, because I've been in a situation like that.
Sure.
And I understand. But there were a lot of things that I was like, something feels kind of gross about this. And as the story goes on, it is kind of gross.
He had a swastika for a head. He was like a living swastika.
He walked on one flat leg.
He's always reaching for something. His arm was
kind of walking like an Egyptian, but scarier. Okay, so the day before the Beatles were on Ed Sullivan, February 8th,
How did it go for them?
How
did they do?
Bombed.
Big
Bomb. Big time bomb. People only tore apart 17 seats.
Only 2 girls wet their pants.
Only 4 parents got trampled and sent to the hospital. So that's the day, February 8th, 1964. At the time, 7:30 a.m., when the Beatles were just going to bed from the night before. Sheriff's department cars surround Stephen Anthony's house. And out come 12 deputies armed with tear gas prepared to forcibly evict Anthony and his family from the house, Chavez Ravine style. Inside was Anthony, his 22-year-old wife, Alona, their 3 kids, the oldest of which was 2.5 somehow, Alona's 14-year-old sister, and their parents.
Okay.
Alona and her sister's parents. When the deputies approached, they noticed something in the upstairs window. It was Anthony holding his baby in one arm and a 12-gauge shotgun in the other.
Oh my God. That's not the bottle. You mix up the bottle and the gun, pal.
Come on. Burp. And they all knew this was not going to go according to plan. The deputies told him he needed to leave. He responded by threatening to shoot anyone who launched tear gas into their house.
Okay.
He said, "I'm perfectly willing to die for this. A man has to die for something he believes in." All too familiar for me. Yeah, no, that's what I'm saying. Like,
I agree with that.
I agree with your fight. I don't agree with your methods.
No, absolutely not. But he tried the legal way.
He did try the legal way. And now I'm going to shoot you or throw a baby at you.
Yeah.
So, of course, this meant that the press immediately descended on the scene. Yeah. Then came the looky-loos, and suddenly this standoff was being broadcast live on TV, and the house was being dubbed Fort Anthony. Surprisingly, the deputies weren't willing to gas a bunch of children and elderly people, so they didn't want to do anything, but Anthony also was not going to give his house up.
Yeah.
He had made that perfectly clear. Like I'm saying, this was, especially today, very relatable of like, I'm not leaving. I have a house. I'm not letting the city, the county take this away from me. His priest was brought into the house to try to convince him to come to his senses. He failed.
Yeah.
This went on for 7 hours. And then miraculously, the county stood down and gave him a 1-week extension on the eviction to give him time to file his appeal to the California Supreme Court.
Oh my God.
Once this was made official, he actually let the press and deputies into the house and showed them all the gun wasn't actually loaded.
Great.
It was at first, but his father-in-law made him take the bullets out because he would 100% have killed somebody otherwise.
Yeah.
That Monday, 12 fellow ex-Marines announced they were joining Anthony at the house to defend it in case the cops came back. Anthony said he told, this is one of the many red flags and dog whistles, like, oh, so now a militia's forming. Anthony said he told the Marines not to bring guns, but ultimately the decision was up to them. The next day, the LA County Board of Supervisors had an emergency vote to reevaluate the eviction, fearing a bloodbath.
There's no way at this point, even cops and press there at the scene of the original showdown, there's no way that the Academy should go forward with this plan.
You think that? Hey, they insisted on having the Oscars like 4 months into the pandemic. The Academy will move forward with anything except nominating movies about black people.
Hey, Green Book won, right?
Hey, La La Land almost won, and then we gave it to Moonlight. My eyes see La La Land. So
why is he like this?
So Kenneth Hahn had to remind everybody, let's remember, we're just building a motion picture museum.
Yeah.
Like he was, like
could be
everybody
anywhere.
calm down.
Yeah.
But there was there were millions of dollars behind this. So like a little bit of bloodshed isn't going to stop the county at this point. And Mary Pickford.
She wants what she wants.
Send Gene Autry in. So luckily he got the appeal to the California Supreme Court, so the county couldn't touch him until they made their decision. So for now he was safe. And suddenly he became a folk hero.
Yeah.
This story spread across the nation, and Anthony was painted as a lone David standing against big Goliath government.
You know what I love about folk heroes? You just have to do a little bit more research.
Yeah,
and they're not folk heroes anymore.
Yeah. Today's folk hero is tomorrow's tiki holding, Charlottesville marching.
Yeah.
It's very upsetting. But people on the street started raising money for his legal fees. The young Republicans held support rallies for him. Again, big red flag.
Yeah. That's weird.
The house became a tourist attraction. Like people wanted to see. Anthony really let it go to his head and started calling his house Fort Anthony, outpost of the battle for freedom from government tyranny.
God, you can use like 4 less words, first of all.
Stop it at Fort.
Yeah.
Even Anthony's pushing it.
Fort Anthony, the greatest story ever told.
Fort Anthony, make Highland Avenue great again. It's like, you know, it's hard to disagree. Like I keep saying, it's hard to disagree with his sentiment of I want to keep my house. Yeah. But like, don't turn it into it's not this.
No.
The county, on the other hand, felt that he was just trying to suck more money out of them. But you know what? Here's the thing about all this. He's right.
Yeah.
He's doing it the wrong way. The city's wrong.
Also not doing a great job.
The city's, you know what the city could do? Give him more money.
Yeah.
Like
that's the problem. You're not giving me enough money, and that's okay. The Academy.
Yes. Mary Pickford could say, guess what? Here's $50,000 over.
We'll help you find a place too.
You can live at Pickfair.
Yeah.
We won't even notice. But it's like,
I'm never there.
If you can tolerate my husband jogging naked every morning, God knows I can't. But it's just so easy of like how much money. The county has so much money. Yeah. Look at you know how much money they probably spent on 12 sheriff's deputies surrounding this house with tear gas.
Yep.
So much money they could have given him. So many of these celebrities this all could have just give him more money. Like he's clearly putting up enough fuss, even if he doesn't really mean it.
Yeah.
Just give him the money.
Just give him the money. Yeah.
But that's not what happened. 3 weeks later, the verdict came in from the California Supreme Court. Anthony had to evacuate the house. The county gave him 48 hours to do so. He responded thusly, I'm not leaving.
Yeah, you know, I figured. I kind of could take a guess that you were. Please. That's the county. Please, come on, do it, please.
Oh, but we don't have any more money. But we're going to send this RoboCop in too. We just bought him.
We're going to parachute a psychopath into your yard and murder your family.
We're going to raise the corpse of Mad Jack Morgan. So now it's March 1st. Anthony had sent his family to stay with some relatives in Burbank for fear of what might happen. So it was just him and a dozen Marines holding down the fort. The press and looky-loos were also there. The only ones who weren't there were the cops. So they waited and waited and waited for days.
Wow.
They waited. No cops ever showed up.
Okay.
There was no communication and no explanation to Anthony of what was going on. Both sides were clearly hesitant to make the first move, but Anthony knew the county was plotting something. So he took this opportunity to petition his case to the United States Supreme Court, which extended his sanctuary time. Still with no word from the county. But this was as high up as Anthony could take his case. And he knew that. He even said that if the U.S. Supreme Court said you lose, he would leave peacefully because he was a good American. And that would be the final word. And then came the final word. On March 30th, the U.S. Supreme Court would not hear his case. So Anthony, true to his word, bought more ammo and refused to leave.
Wow.
So now even more Marines joined him in the house. He sent his family away again, and the stage was set for a final showdown with his 300 rounds of ammo at the ready and a army of Marines, a small army of Marines.
Odin and Highland?
Yeah, it's where it's if you're taking the bus to get to the Hollywood Bowl, you're going to drive by where all this happened.
All of that's insane.
And again, he waited and waited and waited, and no cops showed up. Something very weird was going on, but he did not know what it was.
Yeah.
After a week of waiting, he needed to get out of the house. So he left his lawyer, Leonidas P. Econom, in charge of the house, and he went to go to church, but still nobody came. And then came April 13th, 1964, the night of the 36th Academy Awards, what beautiful irony. The Marines had mostly lost interest and left. So inside the house was Anthony, his lawyer, again, whose name is Leonidas P. Econom, and a friend of his named Pamela Anderson, not that one.
What?
Yeah. And his lawyer's actually, his real name was Atticus Finch, not that one. So they were all watching the Oscars when someone knocked at the door. Pamela Anderson went to answer the door. And standing there were Len Herendeen and Kurt Brubaker, who were two of the young Republicans who were holding fundraisers for Anthony. Oscar party, here we come. They come inside, and then Brubaker committed an Oscar party faux pas and stood right in front of the TV. And he said to Anthony, he stood over him and he said, "You ever seen a pair of these?" And he dangled a pair of handcuffs in front of him, to which Anthony responded, "Oh no."
Oh my God.
So he jumped out of his chair, but Brubaker punched him so hard he flew back down into his rocking chair and shattered it to pieces. Herendeen then opened the door, and 30 of the 100 deputies who had been hiding around the house rushed inside. It took 3 cops to physically subdue Anthony, and he was finally put in handcuffs, and everyone inside was held at gunpoint.
Wow.
The county had played...
But I want to see if Vertigo wins.
I want to see who gets slapped this time. Please wait until the in memoriam. The county had played the long con, and these 2 young Republicans had been double agents the entire time. Anthony was led from the house and charged with battery, resisting arrest, and most importantly, not paying a ticket for making an illegal left turn in Beverly Hills 6 years earlier. So that's what they got. That's what they got him on.
He's getting the electric chair now.
They're sending
Clark
it to
Gable's gonna, Mary Pickford's going to pull the switch.
So they're going to have the animatronic Clark Gable come in. That's how they power him on. Frankly, my dear.
I don't give a zap. I don't know.
Frankly, my dear, I don't give a kablam. So the second they were all removed from the house, a crew fenced off the property, and the next morning they removed all their belongings from the property, including their neighbor's dog, by accident.
What?
And Fort Anthony was bulldozed that day.
My God.
Anthony fought the law, and the law won. He ended up spending 6 months in jail and sued the county many times afterwards for what happened. He later said, "We had to fight the system. Otherwise, they take anything they want under eminent domain. We were harassed, just like in a communist country." Yeah. Is that a red flag?
It's like 95%, I'm with you, pal. And then 5% like,
This guy should have been a silent hero. So he also had planned to later sue the county for destroying something he claims was left in the house by the original owner that was a formula to perfect 3D movie processing. He said that was lost to time. Too bad. We could have had the perfect Avatar experience. Eventually, Anthony and his family left LA and moved to Sonora, California in 1971, where he became a house builder rather than a house defender. But all this was worth it because we now have a beautiful 60-year-old movie museum on that spot. What's that? We don't. That's because the whole project fell apart the next year. The negative press surrounding this incident slowed things down, and while maybe not killed it, it certainly didn't help. Yeah. What really did it in, though, was that the museum just got too big to sustain itself, and they could never get enough funding to catch up with their plans. But we do have that barn that was moved there in the 80s, so grab your baby and your shotgun, because we're going squatting in that barn.